Welcome to our Mothers Out Front Massachusetts Climate Action Call. My name is Diane Sokol. I'm a member of the Brookline chapter and part of the statewide Clean Heat, Clean Air campaign. For those who are not familiar with the Mothers Out Front Climate Action Calls, in the next 45 minutes, you will learn about a specific climate issue and we will take focused action together. Today, we will focus on the climate impacts of Massport's plans to expand the North Airfield at Hanscom, and we will use our collective strength to support those trying to stop this expansion. So here's a quick preview of the agenda for our climate action call. We'll start with a brief overview of today's topic. Then we will hear a personal story from one of our newer Mothers Out Front members, Randy Currier. Next, we will divide into breakout rooms for a few minutes so we can connect with each other. We'll rejoin the main room to hear the background information about our topic today, and then we'll move on to our action. We've set aside about 15 minutes of this call to take action together online. We will come back together for a few important announcements and next steps. We will end this meeting promptly at 12:45, and we do hope you will stay until the end. Before we get going, I'll quickly go over a few norms for this meeting. Please rename yourself in the Zoom to include your name, your city or town, and if you like, the organization you're with. Be sure to mute yourself when we are together in the main room if you are not already muted. You can use the chat to share comments or questions during the call. Closed captioning is available and you should be able to access that tool at the bottom of the screen. We're planning to go into the breakout rooms in a few minutes. Unfortunately, closed captioning does not function in these breakout rooms. So if you need to remain in the main room, just put a message in the chat, type in something like no breakout room. Finally, we are recording this climate action call. If you don't want to be seen in the recording, please use the Zoom controls to turn off your video. Today's focus, we will learn about the climate impacts of Massport's proposed plans to expand the north runway of the Hanscom civilian airfield in Bedford for increased use by private luxury jets. In response to Massport's proposed expansion, Mothers Out Front Massachusetts adopted a statewide position statement highlighting the injustice of the wealthiest contributing the most to climate change that disproportionately affects vulnerable populations and marginalized communities. Today, we will add our supportive active to those of others committed to stop private jet expansion at Hanscom or anywhere. But before we dive into the details of this expansion, we want to share some personal stories together. First, we will hear from Mothers Out Front member Randy Currier, and then we will have an opportunity to share our own experiences. Randy recently joined the Mothers Out Front Bedford chapter. Nearly 40 years ago, she got her pilot's license at Hanscom Field and flew for just a year before she thought deeply about the environmental impacts. Subsequently, she became an environmental economist, then a yoga teacher, then a middle school math teacher. Randy and her spouse have 2 daughters and 2 large ground mount solar units. You can see them here, and they view those as yard sculpture. So welcome, Randy, and we will listen to Randy's story.
Thanks, Diane. I jumped in with Mothers Out Front when I learned of the Hanscom jet hangar expansion proposal because it struck me as an extreme example of environmental injustice. It's common knowledge that poor communities and poor countries are the hardest hit by many environmental burdens, including climate change. The facilitation of private jet travel not only has its climate costs falling most heavily on poor countries, the other side of the coin, the project's benefits, add another layer of injustice, as these benefits are restricted to the 0.0008% of the global population who can afford a private jet. Then I learned that private jet passengers don't pay the 7.5% federal excise tax the rest of us do on a commercial flight for airport maintenance and air traffic control. So the public is subsidizing the infrastructure for the ultra wealthy. The final straw for me was learning that in Massachusetts, the purchase of private jets is tax-free. So we pay sales tax on a car purchase, but not to buy a private jet. In our world that's being blasted by climate events, this new subsidy for the ultra wealthy just doesn't fly for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy, for sharing your personal connection to today's climate issue. Christine, can we see those slides again? Although our topic today is the climate impacts of private luxury jets used by the wealthy few, let's take a few minutes to share ways that each of us may have tried to minimize our own travel-related carbon footprints, whether it's this summer or in the past. Deb, can you put that question in the chat, please? So introduce yourself briefly, what city or town you're from, and your thoughts on today's question. Make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak. When you see the 15-second countdown, use that time to wrap up your conversations. You will automatically rejoin the main room. Enjoy your time together. Okay, welcome back. I hope you found the breakout useful and enjoyable. Personally, I find it inspiring to hear the stories of others. Oh, everyone should try to mute, please. And to be reminded that we're not alone here.
And nations will need to make an immediate and drastic shift away from fossil fuels to prevent the planet from overheating dangerously beyond that level. People are suffering and dying due to extreme climate events like hurricanes, floods, wildfires, and poor air quality. Damage costs are in the billions and cost the US $165 billion in 2022. There is no safe amount of additional carbon emissions we can add into the atmosphere. However, there is still time to make a difference. According to a recent United Nations report, a livable future for all is still possible, but only if we take urgent climate action. In January of this year, we learned of plans for a massive development at Hanscom's North Airfield. Hanscom Field is located about 15 miles west of Boston in Bedford, near the Minuteman National Historic Park and Great Meadows National Wildlife Refuge. It's operated by the Massachusetts Port Authority, or Massport, and is the busiest general civil aviation airport in New England. It does not offer any scheduled commercial service. However, in terms of total flight operations, it is second only to Logan, with over 122,000 flight operations last year, about 1/3 the number at Logan Airport. Hanscom Field abuts Hanscom Air Force Base, but they are separate and distinct. Active military flights at the base ended in 1973, although military flights occasionally use Massport's runway. Among the private flights operating from Hanscom Field, there are some worthy uses such as medical flights. Our concern is not about those or the Air Force Base, but about stopping expansion of infrastructure to house private luxury jets. Since 2020, private luxury jet traffic has boomed at Hanscom. In 2022, there were 38,100 private jet operations, and that averages to over 100 per day. Small prop plane traffic, which once dominated the statistics, is now in a decline. To be clear, Massport does better financially when more planes land and take off. They see growing jet traffic as a major source of future revenue, especially if they can build the North Airfield project. Massport and the developers want to relieve the constraint on private jet flights, and that's limited by the current number of hangar facilities. So expanding the facilities grows the number of flights. And the fees from increased facilities and jet operations are the key to Massport's future revenue growth. In their zeal to grow private jet traffic as a major source of future revenue, they are ignoring the environmental costs. So what do Massport and developers want to build at Hanscom Field? It is truly immense. What is shown here is about 2/3 of a mile wide. It would add nearly 500,000 square feet of hangar space on 49 acres for 27 private jet hangars that will each hold 2 to 3 jets. And that adds up to 81 private jets to the airfield. The area on the left, shaded in blue, is mostly undeveloped and would be clear-cut and paved with over 36 acres of new pavement. Much of that will require removing mature trees and natural habitat. This plan will triple the jet capacity at Hanscom Field, and we believe this could be the largest proposed expansion anywhere in the country, which would be devastating to our climate. Trish O'Hagan from our Lincoln chapter will explain how Hanscom's private jet traffic impacts climate.
So this slide is a bit technical, but it's of key importance. There were over 38,000 jet operations out of Hanscom last year, and we estimate they averaged 2.5 hours of flying time per trip. We used an average of 330 gallons of fuel burned per hour of flying time, and burning aviation fuel emits 11.9 kilograms of CO2 per gallon. However, the actual greenhouse gas contribution of the jets is even larger because emissions include other greenhouse gases like methane and nitrous oxide. So the full impact is called the carbon dioxide equivalent, or the CO2e. To get the CO2e, we must multiply the CO2 emissions by 2. So this gives us a per flight total emissions of roughly 20 tons and annual emissions of 752,000 metric tons of CO2e. These amounts are staggering. And if more than doubling the airport hangar capacity resulted in only a 50% increase in operations, this would mean jet emissions of about 1,129,000 tons of CO2e per year at Hanscom. So to put this in perspective, let's compare it to something good we've been doing to reduce emissions, which is installing solar panels. Massachusetts has been a national leader in solar development with 4 gigawatts installed to date. That's an equivalent of 12.5 million panels. Now here's the key point. The expected CO2e emissions from this Hanscom expansion would cancel out a whopping 70% of the climate benefits from all the solar panels installed in Massachusetts. So let's pause for a brief moment to think about this slide. Increased private jet use is not compatible with responsible climate action. Mothers Out Front works to build an equitable world for all and opposes any infrastructure that would exacerbate extreme weather events, which are suffered disproportionately by vulnerable populations and marginalized groups. Surprisingly, studies show that most flights are not for corporate business. Instead, the flight plans reveal they're mainly to luxury destinations, sporting events, and vacation homes. While some private jets are used for long-haul leisure travel, most are for backyard flights, such as between Hanscom and Nantucket. This increases the emissions per trip because the takeoff phase, which is the most fuel intensive, represents a higher proportion of the total miles flown. So clearly, this is an enormous problem. Sue Swanson from the Bedford chapter will discuss what we can do about it.
Our leaders are listening to our demands for action. In 2021, the legislature passed a roadmap for climate policy that mandates net zero emissions across all sectors by 2050. The Healy administration is implementing this law and taking additional action. Towns are also acting, as are businesses, private organizations, and individuals. Senator Markey recently filed a bill in Congress that addresses the injustice of private jet tax subsidies. It's called the Fat Cat Act. During our breakout, we shared ways to reduce our own transportation carbon footprints. We make these changes because we know that our decisions matter. We realize that the average gas-powered car emits a lot of CO2. What we may not know is that this is only 1/4 the average emissions of a single private jet flight. Research shows that private jets produce 5 to 14 times more pollution per passenger than commercial planes, and 50 times more pollution than trains. This graph compares projected emissions from Hanscom with the emission reduction plans of the 4 abutting communities. The lines at the bottom show the town's goals to reduce their carbon emissions by 2050. The red lines at the top show projected growth rates of private jet emissions at Hanscom. While our towns are committed to reducing emissions, for Hanscom, the sky is literally the limit. But at what cost? How many towns have to reach net zero in order to offset the emissions of private jets that are used by only a handful of people? Can anyone control this luxury jet traffic? The answer is no and yes. Massport is a quasi-public-private entity, insulated from direct control by either local towns or the state legislature. Furthermore, the FAA prohibits state regulation of the aviation industry. So the most effective way to control an increase in flights and emissions is to stop the growth of the infrastructure that supports them. The Massport Board of Directors can stop this plan. The governor appoints members to this board. Therefore, the one elected official who can plausibly stop this project is Governor Healy. She is a strong climate advocate, but to take this step, she will need the support of people across the state. And that's where we come in. As residents of Massachusetts, we can offer our own support and encouragement to the governor, and we can reach out to others, to individuals and to organizations. Mothers Out Front knows the value of a broad coalition of allies coming together to work on a common goal. We have done this before, and we can do it again. Now, back to Trish, who will show us the specific actions that we can take this afternoon.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy we're all here today. Thank you so much for showing up. Today's action has 3 parts, and Deb will add a link in the chat for the online toolkit where we'll describe today's actions in depth. For the first action, we will click a link to sign a petition, and then you can forward this petition to others in your network. For the main action, we'll invite you to write a short personal email to the governor, and we will have detailed instructions for that. And the third action is signing up to volunteer or to be more informed about the issues. So action number 1 is quick and easy. You click on the link for the petition, which will take you to a website that looks like this. It is a group request to Governor Healy asking her to halt the project. You fill in your information and submit it. And then if you could, copy and paste it and send it to some of people in your network so they can have the opportunity to sign as well. If you sign this today, you'll be joining almost 7,000 other people who have already signed it, so please do. Action number 2, the toolkit will provide detailed instructions in this box shown here for writing a short email to send to the governor. This is a chance for you to personalize your requests and concerns. We offer some examples, but we want you to use your own words wherever possible. And action number 3 is a chance for you to do even more. If this call has inspired you to get involved, or if you want to learn more, we provide links to web pages that you see here to sign up for the Mothers Out Front interest form, and another link to the Coalition Stop Private Jet Expansion. So these are our actions today. And please, if you're having any technical difficulties, you can drop a note in the chat and we can assist you. So I think we're all ready to go. We'll be back at 12:40. And so let's get to work.
These calls make me hopeful about our future. It's going to take a lot of people to tip the scales in favor of real climate solutions, but every month we build our movement a little bigger, a little stronger. and we engage others to join our actions, a few more decision makers sit up and listen to us. That is the power of our movement. So later today, you will receive a follow-up email. It will have the link to the toolkit we shared today, a copy of the slides, and a recording of this call. So if you weren't able to finish, you'll have all that information to finish up today. We encourage you to forward that email to your network of friends and neighbors, share with them what you learned today, and ask them to join us in taking action on this important climate topic. The follow-up email will also include a link to the website of the Coalition to Stop Private Jet Expansion, and you can find out about local standouts and other events. And Deb will put that link in the chat again now. So Mothers Out Front hosts a welcome call every month. If you've asked yourself, what more could I be doing to stop climate change, then this might be the right event for you. We'll help you identify the perfect role in our movement for you. We want to help you find ways to use your unique talents, your skills, your experiences to build a stronger, more effective, and more inclusive movement for change. We have a welcome call coming up on Thursday, September 7th at noon. Join us and bring a friend. Deb will put that link in the chat also, and it will also be in the follow-up email. This September, we are joining in coalition with the End Fossil Fuels to unite people for the March to End Fossil Fuels. In an unprecedented move, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has announced a first of its kind climate summit in September, with entry to be offered only to world leaders who have committed to a fossil fuel phase out. While the Biden administration continues to greenlight mega polluting fossil fuel projects, this UN summit will pressure Biden to change course. This is a critical moment for mass mobilization that could move Biden ahead of the 2024 election. Please join us and march for our communities, our families, and future generations to come. And our last announcement, we want this climate action call to be on your calendar every month. Deb will drop this final link into the chat. The next climate action call is on Tuesday, September 26th. We'll be sharing photos and stories and our thoughts from this End Fossil Fuels March in New York City, so you won't want to miss it. So many thanks to all of you for joining to take action together today, both our friends who come monthly to these calls and also to new people on this call. Special thanks to our awesome tech support team for working behind the screen here, and our speakers also. Watch your email for the follow-up info to share with others and to spread our action. We hope that we will see you again next month, September 26th at noon.